In 1975, East Germany received a batch of about a dozen MiG-21s that were equipped for compatibility with the Laser Ground Control Intercept system. They designated these jets Mig-21bis Lazur-M to differentiate them from the MiG-21s without the laser kit. Go figure. So, what exactly was the Laser Ground Control Intercept system? Well, Soviet doctrine at the time focused on using large networks of sophisticated ground-based radar systems to detect incoming aircraft and vector in fighters to perform interceptions, similar to how AWACS aircraft are used today. This had the advantage that the individual fighters wouldn't need large, expensive, long-range radar systems, and also that the fighters could leave their radars turned off until they were in position to fire. The basic idea is that there was an encrypted radio signal that would send navigation commands to the fighter. Turn left, climb, engage afterburner, turn on radar, turn right, engage target, so on and so on. These commands would show up on a display panel in the cockpit of the fighter, and some versions would also display the commands on the HUD. Then the pilot would maneuver accordingly. It was an entirely passive system for the fighter, which maintained radio silence and allowed the commanders on the ground to manage the battle by sending specific planes at specific targets and all of that. There were, of course, disadvantages to this paradigm as well. Critics argue that GCI systems don't empower pilots to get creative or develop new tactics, and that if the system fails for whatever reason, that the fighters would essentially be blind and ineffective. During the Cold War, the East and the West both used ground control intercept systems like this at different times on different aircraft, with the laser system simply being one of the later Soviet implementations used from the mid-1970s into the late 1980s. It wasn't the only ground control intercept system, but it was one of the most mature. What we get in War Thunder is the Mig-21 Lazur-M, a premium jet fighter in Rank 7 of the German air tree at battle rating 11.0 for air and 10.3 for ground. The jet gets a CCIP for its cannons and rockets, but not for the bombs, along with an SPO-10 radar warning receiver. This is a fairly basic entry-level radar warning receiver, but it's better than nothing. Its radar is the Sapphire 21, a basic J-band set with ACM targeting that's fairly common among later model MiG-21 variants. For loadouts, this jet can take a few different options for short-range air-to-air missiles, dumb bombs, and unguided rockets, as well as a centerline drop tank. Since it's a premium jet, you get all of this unlocked by default. For infrared missiles, you have three choices. Forget about the R3S, it's trash at this BR. Between the R13M1 and the R60MK, the main differences are that the R13 has longer range and is more resistant to flares, while the R60 pulls harder, tracks easier, and can make all aspect shots. Plus, you can take more of them. Your radar missile is the R3R. This has semi-active radar homing and longer range than the R60's, but it's only got 10 Gs of pull and it's fairly easy to dodge. I discuss loadout building in a couple of minutes. In terms of its flight performance, this is a fairly high-end model of the MiG-21. It has a better engine than most of the earlier versions and has good acceleration. It climbs well and has a high top speed at altitude, and speaking generally, the jet rarely feels underpowered, unless you end up in a slow crawl. That's an enduring weakness of the MiG-21 family, and this one suffers it too. At very low energy states, like after a prolonged furball dogfight or something, the jet just hangs in the air with very poor control response, and it needs at least a solid 5 or 6 seconds of just flying in a straight line in order to start getting its speed back. Its wing profile is great for rolling and general medium-speed dogfight agility, but in some maneuvers it dumps that speed very fast, which can be a difficult thing to avoid if you end up defensive. Generally speaking, sustained high G turns or defensive jinking are going to be major offenders for energy bleed. Now the flip side is that at medium speeds, the plane has really strong agility, and at least through a couple of maneuvers, it's going to perform well in one-on-one dogfights if your air combat maneuvering isn't too bad. Lastly, the jet does have a fairly good set of auxiliary features. It gets an effective air brake, and it can do afterburners with the throttle. Using 104 to 106% is generally a good idea to avoid structural problems. Plus, it can take a centerline drop tank. Combined with the additional fuel tanks it gets compared to first-generation MiG-21s, I really haven't run into any fuel issues with this plane. When it comes time to fly this plane out into air battles, the first thing to do is think about your loadout. Now, on the outer pylons, the choice is going to be obvious. Take the 4 R-60s. It's double the quantity of other missiles, and they're potent dogfighting weapons. On the inner pylons, it's going to be a little bit more personal preference. The R-13 tracks better through flares and has good range, but it's rear aspect only. The R-3R, on the other hand, is fairly good for head-on shots, but it doesn't maneuver well, and it isn't always very well suited for rear aspect dogfight shots most of the time. I personally prefer a loadout of 2 R-3Rs and 4 R-60 MKs for the flexibility and guidance types, but play around with the R-13 M1s too, as you might decide that you like those better. Now, about the radar. The Sapphire 21 is a very basic radar set, and in practice, its search functionality really isn't going to see very many targets that you haven't already visually spotted. Try to get in the habit of leaving it turned off until you're ready to start making shots. The idea, of course, is just to avoid setting off your opponent's radar warning receiver. Your R-13s and R-60s do slave to a radar lock, so it can still be useful to lock up a target sometimes in a dogfight, and I do this myself mostly out of habit, to be honest. But tactically speaking, the primary use for the plane's radar is just to lock up targets for the R-3R. In terms of match tactics, I personally find this jet to be a fairly competent brawler. Some players prefer to use late-model MiG-21s for hit-and-run attacks and things like that, but I usually like to just take this thing into the thickest fighting I can find and start throwing missiles around. Now, that said, there is one huge key weakness. All of its weapons can be countered very easily. Its infrared missiles can all be one-flared without much trouble, and the Sapphire 21 radar set can be one-chaffed with zero effort to shake off a lock for the R-3R. The majority of your kills are either going to be from the cannon or against opponents who are distracted. It can be an effective jet, but its weapons can still be countered pretty easily. Visually, it's a MiG-21. You get 2 skins, a solid metallic silver, and a standard East German camo pattern. No major errors on the 3D model or anything, and if you like MiG-21s, you'll like this one too. Like all MiG-21s, the Lazur-M lands fast. Your target landing speed is going to be around 300 kilometers an hour to give you room for an abort if needed, which is kind of fast. But thankfully, the landing gear is still famously tough, and you also get a drag chute. You can put the gear down at almost 700 kilometers an hour, and the landing flaps at about 450. Okay, the cockpit. Here's the thing. It's a standard MiG-21 cockpit with average visibility, a radar display, and the SPO-10 radar warning receiver even works now. But it's missing the display panel for the Laser GCI system. The plane is literally named after this one piece of equipment, and they didn't bother to model it in the cockpit. I don't even know what to say. To close out on the Mig-21bis Lazur-M. This jet gets 6 all-aspect air-to-air missiles, it's got a powerful cannon, it has reasonably good one-on-one dogfighting performance, and it gets premium bonuses. However, it dumps energy in sustained maneuvers. Its weapons and radar are easy to defeat. It's very expensive. And it's missing the laser display panel in the cockpit. I mean, come on! The final verdict on the Mig-21 Lazur-M is that this jet can be difficult to get high-scoring matches with in the current meta at its BR, but if you're a Mig-21 fan and you want to grind out the German air tree, it might be a good option for you. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one.